So, good morning. My name is David Kilnick. I've met many of you already over the last few days, and it has been just an incredible experience. And I'm so happy to be here today, and my charge is to talk a little bit about the organization that I founded over 22 years ago called Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth, and how we have grown and the different strategies that we've used. And I'm hoping to do that through a more personal perspective in telling stories, because I think that's one of the most important things we can do is tell the stories not only of ourselves, but of all the people that we're helping and working with. And the stories aren't always crisis stories, right? There's many great stories that we've seen. All of you are leaders sitting here today, and those stories need to be told too, in terms of the work that you're doing as youth leaders. So, before I get into the meat of the address, I just want to thank a few folks. First, from the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Consulate Office, who have been just so accommodating and nice and taking me around everywhere, and they couldn't have been better people to work with. Tuve, Phil, Emily, and Andrew. So let's have a round of applause for. And our organization, I said it founded legally, Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth. Well, we call it legally, that's our acronym. One of the main reasons really that I'm here is because we have an ambassador from Legally living in New Zealand, and that was one of our original volunteers back in 1993, and volunteered for us for the better part of 11, 12 years. And he's sitting right here, Keith Mandel. So thank you, Keith. And so also all of the great people and organizations I have met with over the last few days, thank you so much for your hospitality and for listening and for sharing everything with me. And I look forward to hearing more of that today, so thank you. So what I thought I would do, and I'm a Mac person, so let's figure this out here. Do I just have to press the space bar? Okay. Okay. You know, everyone, I mean, as youth leaders, you're probably asked to share your story over and over again. Right? Can you tell me your story of how you found out you were, or how you discovered you were LGBT? And does it get tiring after a while? It does. But I figured, it would only be fair that I shared my story, personal journey of coming out, and I'll try and make it a little bit short. So I grew up as and by the way, when you've been doing this work for 22 years, you're going to see later on when I show a video, different hairstyles, different weights, different things like that. So if you see a picture saying, why is David wearing that? Think maybe the early 90s, okay? So give me a break. So I grew up in a place called Far Rockaway, Queens. Far Rockaway, Queens. Queens was right outside the border of Long Island. Far Rockaway is a beach community. Rockaway Beach, you might have heard the song, Rockaway Beach. That's the Beach Boys, that's too old. And growing up in an island that was isolated, and Far Rockaway was an inlet, an island, that was isolated with really not being able to get around to many places. I certainly felt, growing up gay, alone and isolated, and there really weren't any services available to me as a young teen growing up in Far Rockaway, and there weren't any LGBT youth organizations, there weren't any LGBT teachers who were out in their schools, in our schools, and so we really had to fend for ourselves, and the only role models that we had at that particular time were, and this is old, I'm 47 years old. But this was like old with Billy Crystal on Soap, if anyone ever watched. No? Yeah. YouTube it, Google it. And you'll see, that was the only really role model, that person that was out. So there weren't really anyone that we could look to in the media, on TV, or really even within our personal lives. And it was really a lonely kind of place to grow up. So that was me in high school. But we all have inspiration, right? There is something that drives us to do the work that we do. And I look forward to learning what drives you to do this work and what drives you to be here at this conference and to work for the organizations that you work for. For me, my inspiration was my grandmother. And I grew up in a two-family home back in Far Rockaway, Queens, and where we lived on one side of the house and my grandmother and grandfather lived on the other side of the house. My grandmother was a politician. She was an elected official. She was the Democratic district leader of the Rockaways. She was chair of the New York State Women Democrats. But beyond that, beyond her being elected, it was what she stood for. And that really stood out to me. And so what she stood for, her big issue was fighting for the voices for the elderly. And so I was able to, as a little kid, go around with my grandmother and really experience her advocating and giving a voice for a community that didn't have a voice. And that was so important, and she sticks with me. Unfortunately, she passed away on July 4th, 1983. But I so wish she could be alive today, because I feel I've taken over the mantle from her to continue that work in social justice, just doing it for a different population. And then, there's a lot more to the coming out story, but I only have an hour and 15 minutes, and you know how long a coming out story could take. Years. So I had this inspiration from my grandmother. It stuck with me. I remember when I was 11 years old, I said to my mother, I said, I want to be a social worker. And they looked at me and they said, why do you want to be a social worker? You can't make any money doing social work. Why don't you be an attorney or something like that? And I said, no, I wanted to be a social worker. So from very early on, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And then I'm going to fast forward a little bit to get to talking about the organization. Well, right before I started the organization, I founded, and it's Auckland Pride this weekend, I was one of the founders of Long Island Pride back in, 25 years ago. This is going to be our 25th anniversary this year. And when we founded Long Island Pride, the premise was, we said, let me give you a little background on Long Island. Long Island is, and there's a reason why it's called Long Island, because it's very long, right? It's over 120 miles long, and who did I work this out with last night in terms of 198, I think it was, right? 198 kilometers? Okay. So it's 198 kilometers. That's a lot, right? And there's over 3 million people that live on Long Island, and so it's a very, heavy population place. And we also, part of Long Island borders New York City. And so it could, for some people on Long Island, it could take a half hour to get into New York City. For some people like myself, where I live, it'll take about an hour and 20 minutes, and for others, it could take 2.5 to 3 hours. And we felt when we were starting Long Island Pride that we said, why should we have to go somewhere outside our community to feel a sense of pride of who we are? So we want to have one right here in our community. And a bunch of 5 of us got together, and we said, okay, we're going to now have a Pride Parade and march, and it's going to be great. And this was 25 years ago, back in 1991, I think. And the process back in the States are that you have to apply for a permit to march, and you go through the normal process. And we applied to a couple of different townships, and we were denied at every single township we applied to. One of the towns did something that was maybe that should be our pride song this year. So one of the townships sent us back a letter that said that we weren't traditional people, we don't want you to march in our town, and why don't you go march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade? Now, but to give some context in terms of how the St. Patrick's Day Parade is treated in the United States, are that LGBT folks are not allowed to march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York and all over the country, whereas in Ireland, LGBT folks are welcome into the St. Patrick's Day Parade, and in many other places. So, I mean, there's reasoning back in 19, and by the way, it's still, you will hear perhaps next month, right? Next month in March, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, how the New York Parade is now inclusive. It's not. It's just they made a deal with a group at NBC Universal, and they're the only LGBT folks that could march on the parade. In any case, so when we got this letter saying, hey, you know what, we don't want you to march, you're not traditional people, why don't you go somewhere else? We said, okay, you know what, we're going to fight this. We got the American Civil Liberties Union, which is an organization that fights for civil liberties in the United States, to represent us, and we took it to court and we won. And for me, this was really coming out now, because this was big news. It was out in the papers. You know, my parents, my mother and father, certainly were seeing me on the news, and they weren't very happy about that. And they weren't happy about that because, you know, what happens when we come out and we come out publicly? They have to go through a coming out process as well. So they were getting calls from people saying, hey, I saw David on TV, you know, and they were telling me, hey, you know what, I really don't want to take this call. I said, well, what were they saying to you? They said they thought it was pretty cool. I said, what's the problem? You know? So we went through this whole thing where they said they didn't want to talk to me anymore. But that didn't stop my enthusiasm. That didn't stop my enthusiasm. That didn't stop my, it hurt, but it didn't stop what I wanted to do. And I always remembered my grandmother right there fighting, you know, fighting for the rights of people. I mean, long story short, a few months later, they apologized in their own little way, and my mom now lives with us, too. So when I say us, my husband and I. So that's just a little bit about how a little bit of my personal journey and coming out, and how I first got involved in activism, and how I continue that today. So what you see here is folks marching in the parade. It was the first time that the organization I founded legally marched in the Long Island Pride Parade. So I was, and some of you have heard this story already, but I was going to a university called Stony Brook University in New York, studying for my master's in social work. And it came down to our last semester to choose to either do a master's thesis or a master's project. Now, as a master's, going through, this was my 6th year of college, and I said, you know what, I have written enough papers already. I don't want to write a thesis, I don't want to write another paper, I'm going to create a project. And this was back in 1993. And the project was to create a workshop or a curriculum to go out into Long Island schools to talk about what it's like, and this was back in 1993, so there was no T at that time, but what it was like to grow up LGB. And so we created this curriculum, got into a few schools, and when I say we got into a few schools, it sounds like it was on the down low and a secretive mission, and it kind of was at that time. And what happened during every single one of these workshops was that students at the end of the class would shuffle their papers, they'd move things around, they would knock it on the floor, and they would wait for every other person in the class to leave so that they could feel safe to come up and just ask me a simple question. And that simple question was, is there any place I can go to meet other people just like myself? Simple, right? And something everybody should have. Everyone should have a safe space, everyone should be able to meet someone who feels the same way that they do. And so that's what made me say that, you know what, we got to take this workshop curriculum and move it into something more permanent. And that's when I started an organization called Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth, or as we call it, legally. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I'm a little bit behind the slides, sorry. Legally, and I'm going to give you some more information on the particular services soon, but legally is really focused in on education and community change. That's how we started. We have 3 LGBT centers right now, a 4th one opening soon. As I said, Long Island is long. I mentioned the workshops in the schools. Long Island has 127 independent school districts, and that's a lot. You know, neighboring New York City has 1 board of education. We have 127 boards of education, which means that there are 127 different decision makers and policy makers to say, do we want to talk about LGBT issues in the school? Can we have a Gay Straight Alliance Club? Can we let legally into the school? And so it's really focused in, we focus in on not only getting into the schools, but changing communities, community by community and school by school. Because not everyone, and you probably know this with your organizations, not everyone could get to you, right? People live far away. And so we have to make sure that even when they, that the centers or our organizations are not the only safe spaces for them. Every single community needs to be a safe space. Every library needs to be a safe space. Every cafe needs to be a safe space. And that's why our work is just so important and so hard and is so critical. So we focus in on that, and this is from the beginning days. Actually, that was our first conference. We're going to have our 20th conference this October. This was in the beginning. We always were focused in on a lot of community support and volunteer support, and we have over 100 active volunteers right now. Back then, it was pretty much all volunteers. Like Keith, I was the only staff person. And so this is just, us getting our first center ready. So, people cleaning up the grass, and I think that was the room that had the pool table over there, which was a great room. So that's just a little bit about how we started. Now, I want to share, as I go in between what we do and how we do it, some of the strategies that we have used to grow. And I think, just basically in social justice movements, but particularly with LGBT movements, a lot of times, at least in the States, people are trying to define the issues for us instead of us getting out ahead and defining the issues. And we have always been out in front, defining what the issues are. And sometimes, you ever hear it's better to be proactive than reactive. Sometimes you have to be reactive, but you could be proactive at the same time. And there are two examples that I just want to share with you. One of the examples there was this very high school dropout rate for LGBT youth in the United States, and that's because of issues of bullying and not feeling safe in the school. Perhaps there's high rates of homelessness also, so it's hard to actually stay in your school if you're homeless. And so many years ago, we were contacted by this agency called the Board of Cooperative Education Services, or BOCES, which runs alternative high schools. And they said, you know what, we think it would be great to have an alternative high school for LGBT youth who have already dropped out. We said, hey, that's fantastic. Let's do it. And so they set up a classroom at our community center. They hired a teacher to come, and our paper, Newsday, which you'll see soon, was about to do a story saying, wow, look at this, the first alternative high school for LGBT youth in the suburbs in the United States. There's one that exists in Manhattan called the Harvey Milk School, and that's at an organization called the Hetrick Martin Institute, but kids outside of New York City cannot get into that. And so we set up this school, and it was ready to run, and it was ready to open, and Newsday was about to do the story, and then someone pulled the plug on it because they were scared about the publicity. So what happened from that was the headline was, school for LGBT youth pulled. When these things happen and they're on the front page of the newspaper, I know to show up very early at the center, because all these news trucks are out there with big cameras and antennas and all this other stuff. And we were when I say taking the lead in defining the issues, we had to be out there and really talk about the need for this. The need to have this alternative high school, and that, because of the dropout rates, because of the bullying, because schools aren't doing enough to make all of our students feel comfortable, and that we need to do a little bit more. And we have to make sure that, and arguments were made, well, this is segregation, and we've heard that, well, if you have an alternative high school for LGBT youth, isn't that segregation? And we always tell people, you can't segregate people from something they're not part of to begin with, right? So if that institution is not inclusive of LGBT youth, you can't segregate them from that. And we shouldn't let our youth hang around for a couple of years without the opportunity to get an education. And so we were out there fighting on that, with that argument, and what happened from this was not a school, but a task force that was created task force on LGBT youth in Long Island schools, and we had demanded that the highest level in the districts be the ones to attend this task force, and they were, it's called superintendents of the district. And so we had about 50 superintendents that participated in this task force over a year, and that started the birth of the Gay Straight Alliance movement, because we were meeting with them monthly, talking about the issues, bringing other youth down and parents down to talk to them, and it started the birth of the Gay Straight Alliance movement on Long Island, which we now have over 100 GSAs in schools that span the length of the entire island. It wouldn't have happened if we just complained about them taking away the school, right? And it was wrong, and we could have, and we would have been right. We would have been in the right to do so. But what we have to remember is that we have to figure out how we can really frame the issues for many others to understand. And that's the general public, that's the administrators, the schools, and et cetera. And then behind the scenes, you could say whatever you want to say about those folks that did this to you. The other issue that we got out in front of to define was a prom. Now this is, it's a prom. Like, are there proms in New Zealand, or? Are they called balls? Mm-hmm. Yeah, school. Yeah, well, school balls. Yes. No. And I'm sorry for going along with it. So But a school ball or a prom is a rite of passage. That's how we see it. It's a rite of passage as a young person. And everyone should be able to take whoever they want to take to the school ball or the prom without fear of harassment, and to go and have just a good time as anyone else. And so what we did is we were planning this prom. We were going to have it at where proms are traditionally held by schools, at these big catering halls and facilities that that are on golf courses and really nice stuff and over water. And so we sent out a press release to let the press know that we were doing this prom, and this was so that they could put it in the paper and so that more kids could know about it and more parents could know about it. So we did it. The New York Times got a hold of it. They did some research, and they said, this is the first suburban prom. Every time we do something, it's the first suburban whatever. But this is the first suburban prom for LGBT youth in the entire country. We want to do a big story on it. So what they did was they did that story, and they put it on the front page of the New York Times, the World edition. And so not the Metro section, which just goes to New York. They put it on the front page of the Times, which went all over the world. And this became the biggest story. And we're sitting back saying, it's just a prom, But we said, let's take advantage of this. Let's take advantage of and talk about why the need for this prom exists. So we got out in front of it. That was some of the pre-coverage of it. When the prom came, we were maxed out to 250 youth that year, and we had over 60 media outlets, which you'll see in a video soon. Over 60 media outlets from around the world that came to cover, a prom, right? So we're now having our 15th prom this year, and it's still needed 15 years later. Not that LGBT youth don't go to their own school proms with whoever they want to bring, but there are plenty of youth who don't. And what's really funny now is that we're in our 15th year. That last year, the prom at this catering hall, there was another school having a prom, and they came down and they said, what is this? Right? They said, what's going on in this room? And so, our youth leaders were like, hey, this is the LGBT prom. And half of the kids from the other school wound up in our prom hanging out because it was more fun, right? It was more fun. LGBT youth know how to do it, right? So it's real important to get out in front of the issues and think of that as a strategy. We could talk about that a little bit later. So it started legally in 1993, and as you'll see in some of the handouts you get, we brought T-shirts for you as well, Long Island Pride T-shirts, that we have evolved into a what I call legally moves into adulthood. And what happened was at the about 10, 11 years ago, we had youth who aged out of legally. and we define youth as up to 21, although it's a little bit youth flexible, age flexible, I guess, where it now goes up to about 24. There are other folks in the States that are now taking youth up to the age of 29. We say soon it's going to be in the 30s, and I guess it's all relative, right? And so when some of our youth aged out, they came back to us and they said, how come there's nothing for the LGBT community over the age of 21? We said, hey, you're absolutely right. We had seniors that came to us that said, well, and by default, our organization, our youth organization, was serving as the LGBT center because there was no other place to meet. And I know from meeting with several of the groups that you're doing the same thing, that other groups use your facilities. So, so they were coming to us saying, how come there's nothing for us? And so what we decided to do was we said, let's find out what the real needs are in the community. So let's meet with folks over a couple of years. We did it over a couple of years. We really focused in on 3 different populations, seniors and elders, the total opposite end of the spectrum, although I guess it's getting very close now with the definition of youth. And then we also said we're going to focus in on people of color communities on Long Island and also the transgender community. We really, we knew that these were the 3 populations that were incredibly underserved. And so we did this for the better part of 2 years. We gathered all this information, and then we said, okay, what do we do with it? Do we change Legally's mission, like many are in the United States, to be all-encompassing of all the populations throughout the lifespan? And we said, absolutely not. It was a 5-minute discussion between myself and our board of directors, our governing board of directors, where we said a youth organization needs to remain a youth organization focused in on youth. That was real important. That's how we started. That's who we are. So we have to figure out a different way of being able to now meet all these needs that we have learned about. So we thought outside the box. The nonprofit structure in the United States is most nonprofits, charitable nonprofits, are what's called 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And so we said, let's start a few other 501c3s. We started the Long Island, that's the wrong logo up there now. It's the Long Island LGBT Community Center, the Services and Advocacy for LGBT Elders Long Island, or SAGE Long Island, that's for elders. And what was the Long Island, there's so many different, you're going to have a different logo on the t-shirt. We'll talk about branding later and how important that is. And I'm kind of contradicting myself here. But what was the Long Island GLBT Health and Human Services Network. Now, these are all 501c3 nonprofits. And we said, here we live in an area where most of the resources, meaning the money to support the work that we do, goes to New York City. And when I say New York City, meaning Manhattan, not even the outer boroughs of Manhattan. And so what can we do to be a little bit more competitive, to bring the resources back to our region to serve the 3 million plus people that live where we live? And so we created the network, which is the administrative arm, meaning that the network handles all the back-end operations, all the administrative work for Legally, for the center, and for SAGE Long Island. So that meant we didn't have to hire 4 executive directors, or what would be considered general managers, I guess here. We didn't have to hire 4 fundraising departments. We didn't have to hire 4 communication departments. We didn't have to pay 4 utility bills. We do now because we have 4 centers. But back then, we wouldn't have had to do that. So it was a way to operate in a very efficient way, fiscally, and also programmatically. Between Legally and SAGE Long Island, we could do intergenerational programming, and there's no, hey, I want to take credit for it, I need to take credit for it, And it's been incredible. In fact, one of the intergenerational projects we have going on right now is, and we think this is real important just as a whole, and I know you heard about this yesterday a little bit, about LGBT history and not losing it, and keeping a really great sense of that. So we're having the seniors, or the elders, are writing their life story, and the youth are performing it in a vagina monologues type of performance. And so it's really creating this great intergenerational learning, and this kind of structure supports that. So, okay. Let me just tell you a little bit about programs and services, and then we're going to get to the video and some other cool stuff, I think. So with growing the network now into an agency of 4 agencies, oh, and you saw another one there, the Q Center. That we just announced the week before I got here, and we're expanding into the borough of Queens. So it's the Queens LGBT Community Center. So now we have a population reach of over 6 million people. It's a big task to undertake, but we're going to be able to really bring a lot of resources back to do what we need to do. So a little bit about what we do, and I could do some show and tell a little bit later. The way that we conceptualize what we do is we offer education and training. So much like all the groups here do, we go out into the schools. That's how we started. We provide workshops, we provide trainings. We have an annual conference. It's going to be our 20th conference, as I said, this October. We speak to about between 75 and 80,000 people a year in over 200 some odd schools each year. It's a very, very big program. And at the conference, there's usually between 300 and 400 youth that come to that, and that's because we have built a community movement and to be able to get school districts to pay for the kids to come. Safe schools, a little bit different than offering education and training, or we see it a little bit different. We have a youth leadership team that's called our Safe Schools team. And our Safe Schools team are a group of youth leaders who get together once a week and talk about, hey, what could we do in the schools? What kind of campaigns can we do? And they organize our National Coming Out Day school awareness campaign, and that is in October. I mean, this is just a small postcard of it. There's a big poster also. And what happens is they choose the theme, our communication department. They work with the communication department to put it together. This was through Instagram. And we start cutting rainbow ribbons next month for this, because we have to cut 65,000 rainbow ribbons. And I know I talked with the folks at Rainbow Youth about that, and we do the same thing. And we create an ally sticker as well. And the beginning of October, this is not coming out as LGBT, this is coming out for Safer Schools. And so it creates a movement in the communities to come out and awareness. And so I have this stuff here for you. So that's a little bit of what we do for Safe Schools. We also have this program, which you'll see. Has everyone heard of the Day of Silence? I mean, it's a big program in the United States that many students like to participate in. And it's where, and this happens at the end of the school year, where students are supposed to be silent to represent, they can't even talk to the teacher, they don't talk to each other in the hallways or in the lunchroom or anything. I guess they don't answer their phones as well. And the premise of that is that it represents the silence that LGBT youth face pretty much every day. Now, when I met with some of you here, I said, you know, personally and ideologically, I don't believe in that, right? I don't. I think, you know, we can't be silent, because silence equals death, right? However, something that I have to remember in running the organization, it's not about me, right? It's about what the youth want to do. But it's about also being able to hopefully, you know, incorporate a larger lesson into this as well. So we train all these student groups to run the Day of Silence program. And there are, I think there was 60 of them last year. And then we organize an event, which is like a big carnival at the center, called Night of Noise, or Break the Silence. And the Night of Noise, and there is a lot of noise, is that, and you'll see it in the video too, where we get these cinder blocks and build a big wall, besides all the carnival stuff happening. And the youth, every youth that comes down, and there's about 200 youth that come down, they get a can of spray paint. This is the only time that people can spray paint, but they get a can of spray paint and they spray paint the wall all the different names that they've been called or heard other people. It is so powerful. I mean, I can't tell you that, you know, I've been going to the program every year. Every time I go and see that, you just want to cry and you want to get mad at the same time, saying, what the hell is going on out there? And so then we give them a little construction hat, they sledgehammer, and they break down the wall, and everyone cheer each other on. So it's a way to break the silence, it's a way to have a night of noise and empower people by taking back you know, the names that they're called. We provide help and support through counseling and groups. We have fighting HIV, STIs through prevention. We provide testing for both at all of our centers. We do outreach. We have an arts program that is targeted towards young men of color, or African American and Latino men on Long Island, called True Calling. Advancing health, has everyone heard of Obamacare? Okay. And so we have the LGBT population is underrepresented in many different aspects, but in terms of accessing health insurance. So we have a project that is called HELM, which is Health Insurance for the LGBT Market, and we have what's called Navigators, and they're trained to enroll people in what's called the Marketplace now, and Medicaid and ADAP, which is the Age Drug Assistance Program. Families is a big thing that we're working on. I don't know if it's as big here in New Zealand, but many LGBT folks are deciding to have children and raise children through all different ways. And so the Family Project provides support for them and their children, and also gives them different ways on how to have a child. And developing community, this is where we take a look at our trans work, some of our trans work, as well as other communities. And public policy and advocacy. It was mentioned here earlier that there's not much work done on the political level. In the United States, there's supposed to be a fine line between what nonprofit organizations can do politically, and I think there's a scare tactic for social justice organizations to say you can only go so far, and I think it's real important to, no matter where you're working, to truly know your limits and not let it be defined for you, because if we take a look at what the churches do in the United States, which are traditionally very conservative, and they're nonprofits, they go extremely far to say that they don't think LGBT people should have rights. So we can go a little bit further to advocate for our community, and we have, and you'll see. And so we see public policy and advocacy as central to our work as well. So let me show you a little bit about the organization and the different tacks that we take. And a lot of times what we do, I mean, you know, talking with folks is real important, but we know that people are looking at our organizations not only face-to-face, but over the internet. And so by putting together different ways that we could tell our story, this is important. And this is what was shown at our 20th anniversary. Do I do it or you do it? Whoops. Let me go back.
Channel 7 Eyewitness News. This is Today in New York.
About 100 gay couples and their supporters will gather here at this gay and lesbian organization called Legally.
Good afternoon from Islip Town Hall, where the caravan will make its next stop. The procession today will go from Babylon Town Hall in Lindenhurst to Brookhaven Town Hall in Patchogue to Islip Town Hall and conclude at Legally headquarters in Bayshore.
2, 4, 6, 8, we do not discriminate.
Parents of students, those who live in the area, and representatives of the Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth Alliance turned out to denounce the Westboro Baptist Church in Kansas.
It's a new effort to stop anti-gay bullying and suicides.
You're watching the newest viral video campaign sponsored by Legally.
Hundreds of students from across Long Island attended an anti-gay bullying conference set up by Legally.
History in the making. For the first time in the suburbs, gay and lesbian students get a prom.
Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth, or Legally.
A first in the country, and it is happening on Long Island.
The Long Island Gay Parent Teacher Association held its first meeting last night in Garden City.
Let them vote! Let them vote!
Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law.
Ayes 33, nays 29.
That's when marriage equality passed.
Legally started 20 years ago with David Kilmnick as a college research project.
You know, I remember 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, being escorted into high schools to deliver our basic sensitivity workshop, where there were threats against myself, there were threats against our organization.
When I think about what it was like to be gay 20 years ago.
My mom had me see a therapist for 4 months, thinking that could be fixed.
LGBT kids are bullied more than any other group of people in school.
People called me names and pushed me in their lockers and treated me different.
My dad, for 2 years, not wanting to touch a cup or utensil that I touched.
It must have felt so horrible to have to come out and live in the shadows or be shunned by family and friends.
The teacher had gave me a pamphlet, and it was a pamphlet with legalese information and what they stood for and what they were about.
There was an article in Newsday about the end of Bayshore. This gay center opened up.
Friday's ribbon cutting marks the opening of the Long Island Gay and Lesbian Youth Center.
This is the first ever. So people were scared. It's like, oh no, by opening this up, you're going to promote gayness. From the article, I realized, wow, there's a place.
In 2001, we innocently sent out a press release to all the media about that our organization was going to hold a real prom for LGBT kids and their friends. And lo and behold, the New York Times picked it up, did some research, and discovered that it was the first suburban prom in America.
Legally, prom was a media blitz because it was the first ever.
Our top story at 5:30, a unique prom night. Gay student couples from our area have a prom to call their own.
This is News Channel 4 at 6.
History in the making. For the first time in the suburbs, gay and lesbian students get a prom. For the first time ever, gay teenagers hold their own prom.
I'm so happy that I'm going to be here tonight. And finally I'm here, and it's amazing. I'm almost trembling.
Channel 12 News, Channel 5, Channel 4, Channel 2. It was sort of like a coming out process because my mom got so many phone calls.
Everybody will remember that event. It was just the lights and the stars, the balloons, and the setting, and everybody dressed up.
Chants for GSA, or Gay Straight Alliance, coming from dozens of Valley Stream South High School students today.
A GSA is a Gay Straight Alliance, and it's important because it's an acceptance group.
Organizers say it's a way to bring everyone together and teach tolerance, and add there are more than 90 such clubs currently on Long Island.
I joined the GSA at our school when I was a freshman, and it was a very small group.
We were educating people, and we were winning our battle, and that was an awesome and empowering feeling.
It is now the first ever parent-teacher association dedicated to helping lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender students, and the response has been overwhelming.
Parents from all over Long Island and even New York City are reaching out to us, asking how they can get involved.
I think the need for the Gay and Lesbian PTSA is to put a face on GLBT, that it might not be what people think it is, that the GLBT parents out there, their children need to see that they're not alone. They're not the only ones. For the GLBT youth to see that they are not the only ones.
Night of Noise, we come here to Legally, and it's just this big party to celebrate. One of the cool things is the cinder block wall, which they let you spray paint different words that you hear, hate words. And at the end, you just take a hammer and you just go at that wall and you just get rid of all those words.
People may think that after 20 years that our work is done. It is not nearly done.
We aren't there yet. There's still bullying and harassment that happens all over the place. I went to the bathroom today and I saw faggot and dyke written on my wall. It would be a lot nicer if you could go anywhere where you could be accepted and feel safe.
Even to this day, there are moments where, I'm with my partner now 8 years. Depending on where I am, I won't hold his hand or get too close.
So many of my friends have come out and told me that their parents just scream at them every day for no reason after they came out.
Someone in the school referred me here because they thought I would be fixed. And they didn't know that it was a center to help GLBT youth. They thought it was a center to fix GLBT youth.
The world that I wish for my daughter will happen, and it will be youth like Kat that make it happen. And hopefully parents like me will help that along, and siblings, and I'm sorry. But there's so much more to do. There should be a Legally in every town.
Legally is one of the best resources you could ever have. I would hope that there could be one in every state.
We cannot forget that our kids are still going to school where there is tons of bullying against them, where there is still hatred, where they're still not fully protected.
If it wasn't for Legally, I don't know emotionally and mentally where I would be right now.
If it wasn't for Legally, I probably wouldn't be alive.
Legally saved me and brought me on the right path, because a year ago, I was depressed, I was cutting, and I was suicidal.
Whether you know someone who's gay, or you're gay yourself, or you're questioning your gender identity, it's a good opportunity to meet good people.
The first day that I was here, I felt so welcomed by everybody. I didn't feel judged by anyone. I didn't feel, I felt safe here.
Immediately, right then and there, I was just like, this is home.
It was like home. Like, I was able to go home on Wednesday nights. I had this little family.
It gave me a family, people that I could rely on, people that support me, people that I love. This place has given me a second home.
Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Anyway, so that, thank you. You know, so through, actually, let me ask you, what did you guys think of the video? Yeah, you cried. Oh, I know, I was tearing over there too. So was Keith. Yep.
That's really great to see and we've got some, we've got some passionate leaders that have taken time off work or university or whatever, and this is how things happen.
Yep. Excellent, thank you. Anyone else have any feedback you want to share? No, we'll come to it later. Yes.
I'll share something. I too am 46 and grew up in Mississippi in a really small town, and fortunately I grew up with really wonderful parents who accepted me from the beginning, but I did go through a lot of bullying and a lot of drama, and to have had something like that when I was growing up has just been absolutely amazing. And I agree with what the girl said in the video. There should be, you guys should be in every state in the country. I think it's beautiful, and I have heard of it before this day. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate you sharing that. And so, when I, besides, always tearing up because I know, pretty much everyone in this video, and I know the struggles that they went through, and the leadership that they exhibited. Like you said, when you get a group of people who are passionate, and our organizations allow that passion to flourish, and that's why we're so important, and we build that leadership. It's, so when I watch that and I see the different aspects of it, each time I watch it, I get a different thought. Today, when I was watching it, I was like, look at everyone just having fun dancing at the prom or dancing outside for that night of noise. Look at the youth who are out there screaming for their rights to have a GSA. Feeling empowered to do that. And to be able to have that venue, to have that forum, to feel and to be able to live, right? And to be able to feel like they have support and to be involved and have that voice, there's nothing better than that, I think. And that's why all of the work that we do is so important. And we wouldn't have had all that press coverage as well. One of the strategies, and again, press is going to be different, or media is going to be different, no matter where you live in the entire world. One of the things I didn't mention was that I have an undergraduate degree in public relations before I decided to go through, social work for my master's and my doctorate. And getting out and defining the issues and doing that, if you're comfortable through the media, is important, because that message then is going to resonate to a much larger group of people, perhaps, than we can physically meet ourselves. And so, the next thing I'd like to talk about is it takes a village. Right? Has everyone heard that saying? And we've probably heard it from the next president of the United States, Hillary Clinton. So that's actually when she was running for Senate, and she came to Bayshore and had a very good hairstyle. I hope she gets that back. So when Hillary said it, when Secretary Clinton said that it takes a village, she was talking about how everyone in a community is responsible for the safety, for the education, and well-being of everyone. And a lot of times within the LGBT movement, or the LGBT social justice movement, we think, or sometimes we come at it through a lens that we have to do everything ourselves. No one's going to take care of us. We have to, it's only, we're the only ones that could do it. And we have taken the approach from the get-go, from the very beginning, that even though we're an LGBT youth organization, our target community is every single person that lives on Long Island. Doesn't matter if they're LGBT, it doesn't matter what their sexual orientation, gender identity is. It means that every single youth, every single student, every single teacher, every single parent, every single business person, and everyone is our target community, because everyone is impacted by someone who is LGBT, and everyone could hear a message that we could bring to them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about different messaging in a second, because one of the other things about Long Island is that it traditionally is a very conservative political environment. So then how can we bring on the support from what is considered very, very much political? So early on, what I learned was that when I went to meet with our legislators, which I guess would be like the city council here in Auckland, we have two different county legislators, Suffolk County and Nassau County, and they were both controlled by the Republican Party. I mean, not that that means anything, but traditionally, the Republican Party is not too supportive as a whole of LGBT or human rights. And just saying, I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, I'm speaking from facts and data in terms of their voting records. And so I said, okay, here we're trying to start this organization in an island or in a county that is controlled by the Republicans. Excuse my language, how the hell are we going to do this? How are we going to get the resources we need to do to be able to get out across all 120 miles of Long Island? So the first thing I learned was that when I sit down with a Republican legislator, I mean, I'll do my research before going in there, but I will probably most likely talk with them not about equality issues. I will talk with them more about criminal justice, about suicide, about bullying, perhaps, that they can probably wrap their heads around that and say, except for Governor Walker in Wisconsin, and I'll talk about him in a second, but they could probably wrap their heads around that and say, you know what, this shouldn't be happening. And I'm not going to talk with them to say, well, you're pretty much, you're part of the cause, you're part of the problem, because you're not supporting equality, but we're not going to go that far, right? We're going to talk about this, and they're going to be able to say, okay, this is something I could support, and that perhaps won't get me voted out of office back home. So there's that messaging when I go in there to really talk about it from a criminal justice, or even, and it depends on who I'm talking to, a health perspective. And there's also a different belief in America's political system is very different. It's basically a two-party system. One party that believes in the government caring for and taking support, helping to support people, that are maybe disadvantaged for different reasons. And then there's one party that's like, fend for yourself. We're in a capitalistic society. Go ahead, and the best man wins. So we know that we have to tailor our messages to different people. But those folks, those conservative folks, are part of the village, right? That it's going to take to be able to do the work that we need to do. And from a LGBT youth service perspective, we have to make sure that we're incorporating them in that village. And it could be a very difficult thing to do with our activist hat on, right? But it's, when we're taking a look at serving our youth, we have to make sure that we're reaching out to them. And there is a message that everyone can support. Now, there's all different constituencies that we talk to that are part of the village. And so, that's the PTA. There's the business community as well. And what we've been able to successfully do when we've taken a look at, our village, we said, okay, business, commerce is a very important part of the village, of any village, really. And so how can we draw in support from institutions that are generally conservative? And it takes time, and it takes work, and once you get one, the other groups aren't saying, well, I don't want to be the first one. And you start to build relationships. So you build relationships, and now we have a business program that has over 150 businesses that support our organization at different levels. And it's not only, we don't, many nonprofit organizations in the United States go to these folks and say, just give us money, we got to do what we got to do. We see it as a relationship, as a partnership. Everything we do is a partnership. So certainly, we're going to be able to get that business's name out as an LGBT supporter in the community. But at the same time, we know that we're going to work within that institution to hopefully make that inclusive and LGBT friendly, so that our youth have places that they can work on Long Island, so they don't feel like they have to move off of the island to be themselves. So businesses are one. This was, elected officials. Nancy Pelosi was the former Speaker of the House, and I talked a little bit about elected officials. We were able to be a lot more progressive with Speaker Pelosi. We caught a lot of flack from bringing her to Long Island. Many people just in the United States don't like her for some reason. So, and I think it's because she's a woman in power. And so, but we brought her in because Speaker Pelosi was the first one in Congress many, many years ago speaking out for doing something about the HIV epidemic, as well as LGBT rights. And she was an amazing speaker, and she came to our gala. And galas in the United States are very long events with usually very long speeches. And so someone like Speaker Pelosi, we were told, was going to come, maybe stay for 5-10 minutes, do her thing, and then leave. She was there the entire 5 hours. And so it just shows that when you find folks that are in public office, engage them because they have hearts too, and most of them do, some don't. We always say that everyone, you can educate everyone, and now this isn't an official word, but there are some people who are uneducable, and you will know, like, if you saw the God Hates Fag sign, have you ever heard of Fred Phelps? Right? So that's when he came to Long Island, and he was protesting because a school started a Gay Straight Alliance Club, and there was a big incident that happened at that school with the football team hazing the freshmen, which was really sexual assault. They were putting the freshmen through like what fraternities may do on college campuses. And so Fred Phelps saw this and said, hey, you know what, the reason why the football team did this is because they have a Gay Straight Alliance Club. Obviously, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But he came with he brought his kids, his little kids, to hold up these signs. And we formed a counter protest, and we had 400 people standing on our side, and he had like 3 or 4. And I'll never forget this. We're talking about it takes a village. This one gentleman came over to me, and he said, I never thought I'd be standing with you about this. He goes, but they're really crazy. So we were only somewhat crazy, We were the lesser of the crazies. But sometimes that's how you do it in building a village. And then, of course, there's really utilizing volunteers and having different messages. This is part of our conference, and engaging educators. And, of course, the messaging about educators for some teachers are giving them the tools and the skills to be able to do the work. I think a lot of times, at least in America, we think that teachers don't want to do what needs to be done. And there's a lot of mandates on them in the United States, all these different curriculums called core curriculum and all this other stuff. And so, but, we have to recognize that teachers are busy, but we also need to educate them and give them the tools and the skills, which I know a lot of you do here, and it's something to keep in mind to do that. So messaging will be a little bit different with that. And then donors and supporters. And it's important to not only say, hey, give us money, right? That's important. And, asking for money is not an easy thing. It's one of my least favorite things to do, right? Because I'd rather just sit down and talk with someone about the organization, and then, get up and say, okay, thank you, But what I've learned in doing that is that approach, not the end of it, but that approach really works, because by talking with each person one by one, I find out what really is important to them, and then I can message what's important to them with something that we're doing or that we need to do, and we need money to do it. And so I'm very lucky now. I have a staff of 4 fundraising staff where they only bring me on the big asks. But, and they have to do all that hard work. But it's, again, the different messages that we have, it's just important to really listen to people to see what's important to them. And it's all about building relationships. More corporate. Political, that was us announcing the Queens Center a few weeks ago. That's 6 New York City Council members and the Queensborough president that attended. So we're really coming into Queens in a big, big way. It's a whole different ballgame, let me tell you, going into to Queens politically than working on Long Island. And then corporations as well. Okay. So, we had talked earlier about really having our voices heard and our stories shared. And this is one of, I think, the most impactful ways we can do that to the larger village, right? To the larger village, is being able to talk about the stories. But before we do that, there's one thing that is always a challenge to us, and this is the way we kind of talk about it. And I know that in some of my conversations, over the last couple of days, we've kind of talked about this. I like to call this the Oppression Olympics, right? So, which form of oppression or which ism is going to get the gold medal? Which is going to get the silver medal and which is going to get the bronze medal? So basically, I think in our society and in our world, and not everywhere, God bless you, not everywhere, we try to up one another and say our oppression is worse than yours, right? And so a lot of times people say, well, we have to address homophobia. And the simple little thing, and I'll do it here, is, what is a phobia? It's a fear, right? And usually when the real definition of phobia is a fear. It's an irrational fear, right? But when we're afraid of something, our reactions to it are justified to ourselves. Yeah, pretty much. Right? So let's take arachnophobia. Everyone know what arachnophobia is? Yeah, you're like, yeah. Yeah, fear of spiders. So what do we do when we're afraid of spiders? We run, crush them, cry. All right, so we run, we cry, we crush them. Many times when people see spiders, they step on them and they kill them, right? Because they're afraid of spiders. Well, if we take homophobia, right, people's reactions are they will run away. They will create policy that will discriminate. They will cry, like they're doing in Alabama right now, and they will, and unfortunately, and way too many times, one is too many times, LGBT folks will be the victims of violence and sometimes murder, right, to justify that person's phobia. So what we say to folks when we talk about Oppression Olympics, to put it in its proper context, and in America, we say, so what do you call it when people are afraid of black people? Is it black phobia? No, it's not. It's racism, right? What do you call it when you're afraid of women making the same amount of money as men for doing the same exact job? Do we call it women phobia? No, we call it sexism. What do you call it then when people are afraid of LGBT people? And people usually don't have that answer, so we have to give it to them. And it's heterosexism, and then all the other isms. And then we talk about that, all these other isms, and it's not that we want to be at getting a gold medal for this, but I think we have to take a look at it that it's all linear. There is no hierarchy of oppression. And imagine, just imagine, if all these groups, all these communities got together as one to battle oppression. We'd be the majority, right? And so we have to remember that village concept, that village aspect, that, if we bring all the different groups, even with all our differences, we're going to have differences. We bring us all in together. There are ways that we can then build more support for our organizations. And when we build more support for our organizations, that means you're going out to more schools. That means you're educating more people. That means you're having more youth coming in that are going to be leaders. And we're really changing the world community by community. So, and this is just some of the examples. I mean, you saw some of this. We were the leaders on Long Island for marriage equality. And right now, we're the leaders on Long Island for what's called Gender Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It's still legal to discriminate against the transgender community in New York. And that's because the advocacy group for the LGBT community many years ago sold out the transgender community to get what was called SONDA passed, Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act. So it's really, got a lot of folks like us up in arms. And when marriage equality was happening, the debate, and you saw when we won and everyone was like, yay. And earlier that day, the Let Them Vote, well, we were happy. That Let Them Vote, that was us organizing a protest in front of the head of the state Senate's office on Long Island because he wouldn't let it come to a vote. Now, I don't think it was really our rally that did it. I mean, there was a lot of pressure, but there's all different ways. There's all different ways we get out there to do it. But when marriage equality was happening, and we certainly were out there fighting for it, at the same exact time, and just as equal with the amount of resources and energy we put in, we're fighting for gender to pass as well. And so, we have to, I think, as young people come into our organization, people are going to come in for all different things. They're going to come in for support. They're going to come in, they just want to have fun. They just want to go to a dance, and that's okay. And hopefully, we have youth, I say hopefully we have youth come in that want to also continue to fight the injustices that exist, and we got to build that. And then you saw the Night of Noise. And this is something we do every year, and I think it's a worldwide event, Transgender Day of Remembrance, TDOR. And so we hold an event, it's called LITDOR, Long Island Transgender Day of Remembrance. And it's a way for folks to come down and share their stories, but also read the bios of folks who were murdered and killed all over the world for being transgender. And it's another way to build community and give people that voice. And this is a very powerful event that we do every year. and then people just having fun. And then, you know, it's in terms of messaging, sometimes there is a tragedy that is important to really turn into a way to educate folks a little bit more. And so what I'd like to share with you is this video we just put together last year called Hope in the Hamptons. Now, I know I talked with some folks yesterday, and when we saw the Hamptons, people like, oh, Khloe Kardashian was just there, right? And you see the Hamptons as a very glitzy celebrity type of place, and it can be. But for folks who live there year-round, very large immigrant communities, and very built on family and the church, and which I think many can resonate with here. So, this was a story we felt we needed to tell, not only to our immediate community, but the larger LGBT community too, who may not understand the issues of immigrant LGBT folks as well. So this is... GLBT centers save lives. They do. We have seen it at our two centers in Bayshore and Garden City over and over again, which are the only two GLBT centers on Long Island. And that is until now. Tonight, we are announcing that this July, we will be opening our third center, the GLBT Center of the Hamptons. This center, located in Old Whalers Church in Sag Harbor, will be a springboard for our organizations to serve the East End communities as we raise enough money to open our very own state-of-the-art community center. This is something we must do for everyone out on the East End. This is something we must do for David Hernandez. And this is something we must do now. At the end of September in 2012, there was a young kid named David Hernandez Barros who committed suicide. Where David really had a problem was when he left school and went out into his community.
The 16-year-old junior at East Hampton High School took his own life last month. His sister says it's because he was relentlessly bullied in and out of school for several reasons.
Unfortunately, he felt a little bit alone and isolated. Did not feel like part of the community itself because he didn't have anyone really to turn to. He approached his minister and also a member of his family in Ecuador and told them that he had a friend who was thinking about coming out as gay. And he said, what should I tell them? And when he told them this, they said to him, well, tell them not to come out because they're going to go straight to hell.
Le gustaba estar solo. Entonces yo a veces le decía a David, decía, mi amor, decía, me dice Gaby que tú estás solo. Quiero que tengas amigos y algunos. Me decía, no, ok, o no. Entonces yo decía, no me gusta que tú estés solo, hace amigos, hay muchachos en la escuela hispanos como que no saben mucho en inglés y tú te puedes socializar con ellos. Decía que sí, que está bien. Pero mi hija me preguntaba que le gustaba hacer que el break se sentaba solo. Y a veces los amigos le decían que tiene Gaby un hermano raro. Le tiraban libros, le pisaban los cuadernos, en el baño, como tienen espacios huecos arriba del baño, los baños son abiertos, le tiraban agua por encima. Y él me acuerdo que estaba escribiendo una carta, escribiendo algo, pero nunca pensé que era la carta que decidió dejarle a mi mamá. Eso nunca pensé. Me acerqué y le dije, ¿qué estabas escribiendo? Él simplemente me dijo, no quiso que yo lo viera, ¿no?
He unfortunately decided to take the toughest route, perhaps that anybody has to take, which is taking your own life.
Y pues yo le vi que él estaba colgado en el baño.
a mí me afectó mucho porque yo también fui la última persona que vivió más tiempo con él y fue la última persona que lo veo vivo. La resignación que tenemos es que Laura está mejor, aunque duele saberlo, pero él está ahora mejor. Donde está, porque ahora ya no lo molesta, es realmente donde él quería estar. Él no quería estar acá.
With all this outreach that was being done, and with all the community interest in seeing a place that young kids could come to and that adults and families could have, as well as a place of support and celebration, the local newspapers out on the East End really covered the story as it was unfolding.
I read an article in our Sag Harbor Express. It was actually an interview with David Kilmnick. So after reading the interview with David, I contacted him, and he came out and we talked, and he looked around, and here we are a year later, and they've been here ever since.
Who would have ever thought that within a span of just 18 months that we would have these community meetings, we would have an advisory board that meets every month. This is important, this is life-saving, this is critical, and we couldn't be more thankful to all the folks who have supported our efforts in starting the center.
I wasn't expecting a center to come anywhere near where I lived for years, after I was already in college, and here it is, it's here, we have this great space, and it's amazing, it's incredible that we get to come to these meetings.
This is a great place, and the people that work here are amazing, and it's a safe space to go to and ask advice if you don't feel comfortable asking either a parent or a teacher, because Manny and Lily are going to tell you the truth and not bring it up if you don't want them to.
The youth come in a lot just to drop in, even when we don't have youth group. They love coming here and hanging out. They consider it their second home, and they always say how they never want to leave. We also have other individuals who come in who have said that they don't feel like they belong or fit in anywhere else, but when they come here they feel safe and they feel like they have a place where they belong.
We have to make sure that that we have a place that that folks like David could come to, that folks like David's mom Carmita and his extended family, his sister and his cousins and nephews, would also have a place to come to for support and to be educated, to learn, and to just be.
It's because of him that everything that we do here at the center, I kind of feel like I have to have his blessing in order to be able to make it happen. Everything that we do here, I always have him in mind. Is this something that he would approve of? Is this the type of program that he would enjoy attending? I feel somehow that if he had had a center at that time, or somebody who spoke his own language, to be able to tell him, it's okay. We go through these things, but in the end, it does turn out to be okay. But his life was definitely not in vain. Because of him, we opened the center, and we are helping many more kids, and we'll continue to be doing that on his name.
So the reason why I wanted to show that video is, this was 2012. So this is like, 19, sorry, I'm going to tear up. It's, 19 years after we started, right? And here's someone who just felt so isolated, and that his family also didn't have someone that they could reach out to. And it took a tragedy for something like this to happen. It's someone who lived, when I said that part of Long Island is 3 hours from New York City, this is 3 hours, could be up to 3 hours from New York City. It's also, someone who is part of a minority community within the LGBT communities. And I think it's real important, that we show, I wanted to show it to you today, as a way to kind of think ahead or understand now that even folks that live South Auckland or South New Zealand and in the very rural and hard to reach areas, and I know you guys know that, you know, we need to make sure that we're reaching out to them. And for those in different communities, cultural communities within our own communities, that's something that we need to be on top of as well, understanding and making sure that that we're there for them. And now, I mean, I'm out of tragedy can come hope, as we said it, and because David took his life, we were able to fast track having a center, and the center is up, it's operational, it's providing a lot of services to folks, and David's mom, Carmita, and sister Gabrielle are very much involved in the center on a day-to-day basis. They say it's part of their grieving process, you know, and wish it was around before they got there, before the situation happened. So, you know, I mean, I had a few more things to talk about, but I'm not going to, because I want to leave time for questions and hopefully answers. So, questions about anything? Oh.